Hey, this is Josh from Art of Attrition.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Anatomy Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Sean Cross, over on the Sean Cross YouTube channel. Today we are doing yet again another episode, and we are hopping back up to Canada, which is really, really cool. We always love talking with our buddies up in the, well, above, country per se. And all of the people we've had the opportunity to collaborate with so far up there, that mainly being Alex Savanier of Alex Savanier Audio. He's been an absolute help, and more or less shout out to him, because if it was not for him, I would have not have checked out this band Art of Attrition, their most recent full-length album, in the first place. And I mean, yeah, shout out to him, because after listening to that album, that is how this whole podcast opportunity, this inquiry started in the first place. Really solid music that these guys have been writing. And yeah, welcome Art of Attrition. If everybody could introduce themselves, just name and their role in the band, and then we can go ahead and dive into the first half of the podcast.
Hey there, this is Greg, and I play the drums.
Jack, I play guitar.
Josh, I play the singing.
I'm Johnny, I play.
Lovely to meet you all. And again, thank you for your time.
Also add, Jack also does the orchestrations and the bass.
Johnny
badass.
Too. Does orchestration as well.
Sweet. Yeah, and I think I remember that even being in the description of the Slam Worldwide album stream upload. So definitely good thing that you reminded me of that again, because I would have absolutely lost train. I would have absolutely lost track of that important detail. But again, thank you, gentlemen, for deciding to stop by. And I heard about the adventure that was going on for you guys, some of you to even get into this casting couch room and participate in this session with how great the weather is up there right now. So much appreciated for you guys risking your neck. Just like, we got to get this podcast, just like actually getting through what could be very severe weather compared to down here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, with us, well, I don't know, not getting anything. And most of the north in general of the US getting plenty of snow and even like blizzardous conditions. I've been hearing, like, participating in weather YouTube channels and shit. Like it's crazy. So thank you guys for going on an adventure and kind of risking your tails to get this podcast session done. But today, as everybody who has listened to our 45 prior episodes now, with a couple in storage, but they will be uploading soon, featuring the Human Tragedy returning, Dead Awake for the first time with Dylan, and another session that being with I lost track, but there's so many episodes. Thank you guys for stopping by, and let's go ahead and deep dive head first into the background of you guys as people, and everything you feel is relevant as a musician, and on your journey as far as getting into Art of Attrition. Anybody may start off, basically just go as early as you wish, and take as much time as you need, but with the hour increment and stuff in mind. Let's learn as much about you boys as we possibly can this hour.
Cool, yeah. I mean, for me, this is my first metal project, so this has been like a huge learning experience for me. So that's been really cool. Been a lot of fun so far. So yeah, I'm really liking that.
Do you want to talk about the origin, Jack? So you guys basically created this.
Sure. Yeah. Johnny and I met a while ago and had similar tastes in music. And I was a bass player back then, playing rock and roll, but that was too boring for me. Wanted the challenge, so I ended up learning guitar and just went straight to an 8 string, just double or nothing. Yeah. So yeah, we had a little jam sessions here or there, just learning the 8 string guitar together, and came up with a couple of riffs that we both liked, and similar styles, similar bands that we liked, and figured we'd take her a little farther and find a drummer. And I remember playing bass for a show or two with one of Greg's old bands back in the day, and reached out to him, and that's kind of how this all got started.
Sweet.
And didn't really start until the start of the pandemic, so we're a pandemic band.
Pandemic band, let's go. We got another one on the podcast, baby. So, if anything, amongst you gentlemen, I would then want to ask, who has like the earliest recollections, like maybe the earliest point in their lives as far as getting into music and getting into playing other local bands, participating in other local projects before they ended up contributing and building up to what would be Art of Attrition? Who is the founding member?
I would say it'd be Johnny and myself got her going. What would we be, 2020? Is that when we started doing this?
I think so, something like that.
Yeah, it's
That
been a
is
journey.
pandemic time. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, let's see. In that case, with you two being the founding members and stuff, and you mentioned already that you and Johnny ended up having other projects that you were participating in before. What were those projects? Like what made them kind of separate themselves from Art of Attrition style, whether it be genretically speaking or maybe the general atmosphere? Like what ended up being the big difference between those previous projects? How did they get started, all that fun stuff, and how did Art of Attrition end up getting decided upon ahead of those, in place of those?
Yeah, like I mean, I was playing bass in a rock band for a while, and it was a completely different type of music, but it was just from, buddies from high school, so grew out of that. And then there was a sludge band after that, and just still on the bass, but I was listening to other stuff, but just playing in friends' bands just to have a good time, be a part of something. But yeah, that was kind of the fall, or the lead up to how Art of Attrition became, its own thing, playing the music that we were listening to and wanted to play.
Yeah, and I was kind of the same, just random high school band projects and stuff like that. Nothing really that ever went anywhere. And I think we just ended up meeting kind of through friends in the music scene. And then, yeah, I think you literally just messaged me one day. I was like, yeah, you want to try this band thing? I was like, okay, yeah, let's give it a shot.
Sweet. Yeah. And like with you guys mentioning that this ended up being a pandemic project, a band that ended up getting really started because you guys had the time, and everybody had more than enough time on their hands to attend to various creative mediums they weren't able to before, or at least not as much. Are you guys pretty spread out across the Canadian, like, Canada and shit? Like, are you guys in different cities? Are you guys like 3 hours apart in total? Like, how much does it spread for Art of Attrition across Canada?
Well, right now, I think, Josh, you're furthest away. You're what, hour and a half? The roads are real bad.
Yeah, about an hour and a half. Yeah, up in Edmonton, and then the rest of the guys, they live down here in Red Deer,
Okay.
which is where we all currently are because we were playing here last night.
Yeah.
So we woke up, had a nice little brunch, little podcast time.
Yeah.
Greg's a really good job.
Casting couch.
Casting couch. Yes, sir. Let's see. Okay, so like with Art of Attrition, then, you guys kind of get that assembled, and you guys got the founding members and stuff. How did the other two end up getting involved into the picture? You said like you guys just ended up meeting online and talking as friends and stuff, and had a similar taste in music. Like,
Well, we had to come down to this very couch.
It was a process.
They had a strip.
so that is the casting couch. Okay, I understand now.
We're looking for a bass player.
Bass and drums is usually the last piece I'm understanding. It's like, yeah, we could use a bassist. Go ahead and hop on, No, that's great. So obviously you guys have a collective understanding for what you want to make for Art of Attrition, which is more or less like Blackened Deathcore, Blackened symphonic Deathcore, with like very, very heavy, as I was listening to your latest album, very much some symphonic elements in there too. Some like almost electronic elements, which I thought was really interesting. And it does help distinguish Art of Attrition from even other bands in Canada, really, that I listen to on the regular, that being Angel Maker, Carcosa, Bride of Sacrifice, even Nihilist. all these like heavy fucking projects. And I noticed that with Art of Attrition, like sure you have the Blackened symphonic label, but there's plenty of like electronic elements in there too. So what do you guys like on your own? What do you guys end up listening to? What are some of your like favorite artist albums that to date that really have helped you forge your sound and forge what you contribute to Art of Attrition?
I think like when we were writing The Void Eternal, I was listening to a lot of Arcspire and Slipknot and Belphegor. So I kind of put all of those influences into that album. And the special thing to me about this album is that I do one of the hardest things in metal drumming, which is the left hand gravity blast with the right hand accents. Like not a lot of bands in Canada can do that except for Arcspire that I know of. So that was really cool to bring to the table and to kind of like include into the songs. Yeah, and then all the symphonic parts really add to the atmosphere, and then all the chunky riffs, you know, it's good. It kind of breaks it up, the monotony of your typical Blackened deathcore, you know, because it kind of just gets almost tonal sometimes.
Yes.
And so just being able to switch back and forth and to have a song without it and then have a song with it and then to, you know, kind of have different tempos in the songs really helps us break up the, you know, monotony of the barrage of sound, because that's what it is. Like,
right.
You know, only listen to that kind of stuff for so long before it just kind of is like a mashed potato.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Like blast beats are fun. They're really good for like bass heads and shit. Maybe people who first, when they were getting into music in general, were more or less getting into EDM. They were getting into dubstep. They were enjoying the very, very repetitive bass drops from all of these millions of artists who were rocking the charts at Lollapalooza or Tomorrowland and shit back in the day. Like mainly 2012 to 2014 or 15, I would say. That's kind of like when that genre peaked. And, you know, I allude to my own musical journey, really. Because that's what I started out with. I was a bass head, and that's why I plan to be a bassist, but we'll see if that actually fucking happens. Because, you know, it's fun, it's really, really fun. But when you've only been in like intermediate guitar and that's like the farthest you went, you didn't really do any music theory, you know, a couple songs, but you're not familiar with recording DAWs, or maybe, you know, you're not familiar with like bridging that gap between playing an instrument and then channeling it into a DAW. It's like that's really the only wall there right now. But absolutely, dude, like the bass and the drums have always been like my favorite part of a band when it's not the vocals. And like guitar, of course, you got to shred, you got to add those solos in there, you got to add another voice that happens to not be a human voice. But it's always been like gritty varials, or even Kublai Khan, just like hardcore gritty fucking sludgy muddy bass. And then if you got a solid drummer, better term, then you really got an interesting formula going on with what is supposed to be one of the heaviest, but newly the most marketable, or at least, you know, a genre that's becoming more marketable, with titans like Lorna Shore or Brand of Sacrifice kind of taking the reins and bringing that genre into the forefront of music. Like even Revolver and shit are talking about bands like Lorna Shore now, and it's been really, really cool. So if anything, Greg, whilst we're talking about the chops, while we're talking about your drumming efforts and what you ended up cranking for this album, because it sounded absolutely fantastic, especially with my my Skull Candy Crusher wireless headphones, which are just absolutely mobile subwoofers. If anybody wants that, like, Crushers are to go to, really. They're just a little bit pricey, so it's an investment, but it's a worthy investment. Greg, I wanted to go ahead and ask you, inquire upon how you ended up getting into drums.
When I was younger, I had a tapping problem, and I was always tapping on stuff, and so my parents bought me a Pearl kit, and then from there I kind of just, you know, I picked it up pretty quick. I was a natural. I'd do AC/DC kind of stuff. And then my best friend Levi, he got one of those beginner Fender guitars and a amp. And then we kind of that's how my musical journey started with drums. And then I started getting into metal about probably 12, 13 years old. I was in my living room and I was looking through my dad's CD case, and I seen this Black Album with a snake on it, and I was like, "Oh, what?" Yeah. I plugged it into the CD, and Metallica came on, and then I was like, "Holy!" It was a pretty powerful experience. And then from there, I asked my dad. I was like, "Okay, well, can you show me more of this kind of stuff?" And he's like, "Okay, yeah." And then from there, I remember one summer, I think it was grade 9. So this would have been like 2006. That's when Lamb of God's Ashes of the Wake came out. And, Mark Morton and Willie Adler had a spread on, I think it was Guitar World at the time, for Laid to Rest. So they released it in the springtime, and then they were on that, and Levi picked up that magazine and album. And then I remember him getting home and he called me. He's like, "We got to hang out this weekend. I got to show you something." And then he came to the house and then he's like, "Listen to this." And then like Laid to Rest, Hourglass, Now You Got Something to Die For, The Faded Line, all those. And then from there, we just started exploring through Revolver magazine and all those hard music magazines. And we started finding bands, Black Dahlia Murder and Mastodon and Soilwork. And then eventually, we started getting into the even heavier stuff like Cannibal Corpse, and like the black metal Dimmu Borgir and Septic Flesh, and then we started our own band, Catharsis, in high school, and then it was Before the Unseen, and then after that it was Awaken the Abstract, which Jack played with us for a little bit, and then after that, I kind of took a hiatus on the drums and went to work on the Pipeline.
Okay.
And then I remember I was still kind of playing music with this band called Dissimulus. And we played a show I think actually it was Dissimulus, and then we went back to Awaken the Abstract, and we played a show with Arcspire. And I remember that it was their All Shall Align tour. So they released All Shall Align, and they were doing it across Canada. And I had no idea what was about to happen, they played their music, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like, it's so crazy. I was watching Spencer Pruitt. I was like, "Holy cow, like, this guy is just wild." And from that day, I was like, I gotta do that. Like, I gotta learn to do that. And then I started listening to Origin, and then John Longstreth with his heel toe kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I got to fucking learn how to do that, because, doing single strokes, it was difficult at the time because you could only go so fast, if you didn't have the grit and determination to get, super fast singles. And then I spent a lot of time. I think I was spending 3 hours a day trying to learn it. And then, and then my other band, Plaguebringer, is I joined that band, and from there I learned a lot about just like composition and how to compose the music. And then I've been with them for about 6 years, and then Jack sent me some songs, and he was like, "Hey, would you consider doing some drumming?" And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. And then, it just we were rehearsing, and it just clicked. And then we were all when we're in the room together, we write really well. And then, we spent, I think, a year and a half writing The Void Eternal. Sweet. And then we recorded with our good friend Diego from Oracle Studios, who is an amazing person. And he's he really gets the best out of you. And then, then we released it, did the music video and then the lyric video. And that's kind of
Here we are
today. And, yeah, last night I think was our fourth show we've ever played, and we headlined last night, so it was really cool.
No, that's actually really cool. If anything, too, real quick, I would want to ask you, like, what is your favorite thing about drumming? Period.
It's just very. It sounds counter to what you hear, but it's relaxing. I don't know. Oh, I think like drummers will understand. Like it's just it's like it's nice to be behind the kit and just kind of, you know, just work on stuff, you know. You get to if you're really passionate about it, it doesn't matter what you're doing. But like like the sense, like if you get something, like for example, like, you know, if you've been working at a song and you're struggling, but then, you know, a couple weeks later you finally nail the part, you know, that's always really good. And yeah, that's my favorite part, is just like it's a nice safe space for me, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, being a drummer, man, you have to be in really good physical shape too, I would imagine, to be able to play the drums like you do. Like there's not been, except for maybe Silent Planet's drummer, I haven't really seen any other drummer who is like as ripped as they are, because they're like having to be so relentless and so like consistent, and like, dude, their legs and everything are just ripped to shreds. I'm like, yo, dude, what the fuck? Like maybe I need to get into drums. Maybe that's the the way I turn into one of these celebrities, is just like learning to smack the kit and just like having a consistency, a pattern to it. Because it's really the heartbeat of the band. Once you hear that drum kit, once you hear those certain blast beats, those certain patterns, and of course, like, you fine tune to the music that you're creating, right? And you like end up becoming one with the music. And especially if you're working with the right people, if you're working with your friends, your brothers, that sense of camaraderie and that sense of resonance, really, like you all become one for a second. And that's kind of like what the Anatomy podcast is. It's like really just dissecting like how, who, when, why, where, all that shit, as far as like all the major components of this one thing, this band, this project, this collective effort that is Art of Attrition. But absolutely, for starters, Greg, thank you for providing us insight on your background as a drummer, how you got into drumming, your inspirations and stuff, and yeah, how you do everything that you've done so far for Art of Attrition, which is a really good project. And again, I'm happy to have you guys on the podcast. It's really cool. So next, I guess, because everybody wants to know about this. Everybody still has that frontman syndrome, to like, no matter how much time passes. Josh, same name as my best friend, my actual twin, not legally speaking, but he's only 15 minutes older than me. Really cool to be having another Josh on the podcast. I would love to go ahead and deep dive into your background as a frontman, how you got into vocals, the various projects that you participated in, very similar fashion to what Greg ended up explaining to us just now concerning his drumming background. And yeah, tell us your story, man. We want to hear it.
I think we could do that. I also played bass first. I played bass band in Victoria for a couple of years. Before that, I actually was pretty big into like concert band and jazz band. I played trombone and tuba for a while. Had a lot of hot air, I guess, so it kind of lends itself to singing this kind of singing. So
right.
Yeah, I eventually moved up to Prince George and joined a band up there, and then playing at a festival. They're called Seraphic Nihilist, and I played with them at a festival outside of Prince George called Metallian Fest, which is no longer happening, unfortunately. There were a couple good years there, though. And while I was there playing with them, I met the guys in Proto Sequence, which is the other band I currently sing in, and decided that I would move to Edmonton to join Proto Sequence. So following that, we also recorded Diego. I don't know if you talk to any bands in Western Canada, like 90% of them know Diego and have had music mixed and mastered by him, and he is every bit as phenomenal as he is described as. He is excellent at what he does, and he's a really, really great guy. So if you're ever in the market, I'm just going to shamelessly plug Diego Fernandez.
Absolutely, man. You gotta represent who's like behind the mixing, the final product of what you guys have done so far. So absolutely, man. Shout out to Diego of Oracle Studios.
Yeah. And then at some point in 2020, I guess, I can't remember. It might have even been, was it either Greg reached out to me, or it might have even been Diego mentioned that there was a deathcore project that was starting to kind of get together, and they're looking for vocals. And then eventually, I think Jack sent me a few demos, and I was working out of town in camp doing a 14 and 14 thing. So, being in camp working when you're not actually at site working and you're in the camp just hanging out, especially during COVID, because everything was pretty much locked down and you're almost confined to your room. I had a lot of time to listen to the tracks and start thinking of some vocal ideas. And then I think that winter threw something together and sent it to them, and they must not have hated it too badly, because here we are now.
Here we are now. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And the thing is too, like you're mentioning how you ended up like relocating for like on multiple occasions for different projects. Like that's admirable, man. That's really admirable and respectable. Cause like just speaking for projects in general, even, with the pandemic in mind and stuff like that, precursing that, it's like, I don't even know. There's a lot of devotion behind that. So from early on, I can tell you were very intent on becoming serious about music and art and what you do for this band. And concerning your bass guitar background, because obviously not even seasoned bass guitarist over here, barely learning, barely getting into the process, whilst also having 7 to 8 years now of self-taught and outsider taught vocal efforts and stuff. What ended up getting you into bass?
I think it was playing trombone and tuba. I remember being in the 12th grade, and I traded my I went to the music store, and I traded my trombone for a bass guitar. I'm over band class. We're gonna start a punk rock band, and so it made logical sense. The type of parts you play on a tuba and trombone, a lot more rhythmic and holding down the low end. So that transition made a lot of sense. Just had to figure out how to go from tooting a horn to plucking 4 strings.
Have you ever thought about have you ever thought about incorporating those previous instruments and your knowledge on those into Art of Attrition for future material?
We probably should.
I don't think I could play trombone. Yeah. Oh yeah, I could play a trombone.
Yeah, dude, I think that would be really cool. And if not now, with like the Void Eternal, the material you guys have already provided, I think that would be a next step really for the scene. Is okay, so we have like trombone and trumpet now in Blackened Deathcore. What the fuck? Have it be
jazz fusion.
Exactly, dude. Make it jazzy, make it funky, make it like very speakeasy vibe, and then it just flows into a breakdown. That would be great. There are bands too that I've interviewed previously, that being Nail Splitter. I forgot what they're based in because it's actually been years since I hosted them on the podcast, but they had their first EP, Hail to Agony. And all I know is I think they are planning on incorporating sax into like deathcore slash the genretic blend of music that they're planning to do, and mainly because of bands like Rivers of Nile, because apparently they do that type of thing with their music. They incorporate saxophone into their music, and I'm like, God damn, that is a good next step for just music in general. So that's really cool. And it's really cool to know that amongst, all the other talents in this band, Josh, that you have that sort of background with like not even just bass guitar, even if it was until further notice temporary, like you had experience with those like outside, those very foreign instruments to metal. And I would be very intrigued to see, you know, the potential incorporation of those instruments into the music, but no pressure. Absolutely no pressure. So if anything, Josh,
Seems to have been decided. We're gonna have that.
there you go. So who let's see. As the vocalist and stuff, like, do you guys kind of collectively decide upon the lyrical content for Art of Attrition, or is it like, you know, just the vocalist? Like, who's the main captain of the ship when it comes to the lyrics that you guys write for your music?
I take suggestions sometimes.
But it's okay, cool. Let's see. In that case, Josh, real quick, name a couple like bands or artists that have kind of helped you forge your efforts for Art of Attrition.
This one is going to come from way out in left field.
Okay.
But
Bring it
Core
on,
Blood.
baby.
I'm a really big Core Blood fan, and I think listening to I like bits and pieces of country, but like more like the older kind of bluegrass typey stuff.
Yes.
And it's always a good reminder to that, like, although this type of vocal whatever is, it's still kind of like screaming and growling, like you're still singing, and it's important to still incorporate some range and dynamics into that and still remain singing, not screaming.
Yeah.
So that's influencing that. And then I've been listening to Lorna Shore for a long time. So like I remember like when the Alliance came out, like Bone Kingdom, that kind of stuff way back when, and Psalms was really good. Like way before even CJ McCreery was in the band, like back when it was Tom Barber singing.
Yeah.
I was really big into that. Misery Signals as well was a massive influence. I got into metal really late compared to a lot of people. I think it was a fellow that I worked with at a department store when I was like 18 that showed me Slipknot for the first time. And then I kind of got into metalcore and emo and that stuff. And then I heard Misery Signals on a metalcore playlist. But what was different about it was that my introduction to Misery Signals was the Absent Light album, which was 2013, I think, compared to a typically
Like Controller.
yeah, or Malice and Magnum Heart back then.
Right. No, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think those are the top three.
Sweet. Yeah, that's badass. And to know that you're like among many others in the scene that I just have yet to host on the podcast regarding their respective bands. It's really cool to have someone who's like an OG Lorna Shore fan, because I will wholeheartedly admit that when it comes to the Lorna Shore discography, I really only got engaged with the Immortal cycle, you know, after that great vocalist migration, the great vocalist transition between David Simonich, CJ McCreery, and what would be Tom Barber. You know what I mean? It was a very strange time, and it was a massive, just like, I don't even know. It was almost like the scene got distorted a bit. And I mean, I've talked with bands like Awakened Providence on the podcast about it before. Shout out to them. Because it was just a strange time. It was a strange time for labels like Unique Leader or Outer Loop Records. It was definitely a different time, and only seldomly, I think, back in 2020 or 2019 that I actually go back in time, mainly out of boredom, to listen to the older material on Lorna Shore's discography. So I guess, like, regarding that, because, you know, that could be a question people would want to ask regarding the participation from an OG fan. What is your top Lorna Shore song of all time?
I think it's got to be Retching and Torment for sure. Like, just that opening slam riff. It's too good. It's every time I hear it, just like you know.
No, absolutely.
It's fantastic.
No, it's badass.
I got favorites from all of their albums. Like most of Immortal I was really big on, and This Is Hell I thought was excellent, but I think overall, yeah, Retching and Torment is my favorite.
Sweet, badass. And with that, we kind of wall off that segment. We talked about Josh Hahn's background and everything that he does. Also, I gotta say, dude, probably like the richest and most like Canadian accent, I think, from anybody that we've had on the podcast before. Like, if I had no knowledge that you guys were from Canada, I would even think there's a little bit of Irish in there, but I love it. I love it, dude. It's great. And it adds variety. It adds like spice to the podcast session itself, just to hear these different dialects, hear these different tones, and just like, I don't know, accents from around the world, dude. Like Malaysia so far, Australia, Canada. It's been really, really cool. So as we move on, and we're trying to, as quick as possible, conclude what will be the first half of the podcast, Johnny, it's your time, man. So I want to, dig into your background a little bit, because as Greg was mentioning near the beginning of the session, not only are you a guitarist, man, but you also handle the orchestration or the orchestral elements of Art of Attrition. So obviously there's a little bit more to you than meets the eye, my friend. Let's go ahead and dig into it. Tell your story. How did you end up getting into like your first musical instrument? How did you, end up getting into everything the similar way that we've been doing and we've addressed with Greg and Josh now? Go ahead and tell us your story, man.
I mean, I wanted to play guitar for like as long as I can remember, like way back to being like a little kid. My mom was pretty musical. She made me take a couple years of piano lessons before she bought me a guitar, which was kind of a pain, but I really appreciate that now. So yeah, I probably started playing guitar when I was 10 or 11. And I was really into just like rock and roll back then, like a lot of the stuff, Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, all that kind of stuff. Like I just spent hours with my, beginner Fender Strat set, just jamming that stuff out. I was pretty late to metal, same as Josh. I was probably, towards the end of high school before I started hearing bands. Like I think August Burns Red, I think was probably an early influence, and just some of that, like the 2009, 2010 kind of metalcore stuff. Started finding that a little bit later on, and it just progressed from there. Yeah, like I said before, this is my first metal project that I've been in.
Yes.
I haven't really played metal with, besides just jamming it on my own. So yeah, this has been really good. I really like the challenge, especially in a genre like the one we chose. I mean, it can tend to be a little oversaturated at times. So I like, trying to find something that's recognizable as, deathcore or death metal, whatever we're going for, but still being unique and, finding out what you can still do with this, right? Everyone's kind of going in the same direction, which is, it's awesome. It's the symphonic thing is big right now for a reason, because it's great, but it's also nice to kind of branch out and see what else you can do with it. So
Yes,
I think we've already been talking about it, big focus on, what else can we do with this genre moving forward? Can we make it heavier? Can we make it blacker? But can we still give it elements that are going to set it apart from, what you'd maybe find normally in the scene?
yeah. And as someone who's, I'll do apologies too for the misunderstanding on my part, distinguishing between Johnny and Jack. After all, this is our first time talking.
All the time.
There's so many J's. No, but I'll do apologies, Jack, for getting that confused, and we will definitely be covering your story as soon as we tell Johnny's story, because it's all about telling everybody's story today with the time that we have. So I mean, yeah, you've been participating in music, you've been doing guitar, you were kind of later to the scene, which, dude, to be honest, I was too, like 2012, 2013 with Suicide Silence and the Cleansing Cycle. That's really, really where I started. And it's something that I mention as often as possible so people can call me a poser if they want. But in reality, it's like, well, I wasn't even allowed to do the swoopy hair, I wasn't able to have I was not even able to have that era. It was more like, okay, Tile Cruz, dubstep, Cannibal Corpse, and then, deathcore and shit. It was a weird time. It was a very weird time, but shout out to absolutely all of my friends and who I call family now who got me started on that, because this is the result, really, just talking to people around the world. But, you got started later for compared to most musicians in the relative scene. But, I mean, as a guitarist and shit, dude, who are some of your like biggest guitarist influences, like as cliche as the joke is now, just milking that who's your favorite, it's like also it's important to recognize and acknowledge like who you've been inspired by, who you've have aspired to becoming a musician, because just getting into music, man, becoming a guitarist, becoming a bassist, becoming a drummer, becoming the main orchestral influence, for example, like Jack, it's like there's so much time and effort that goes into it. It's like that those first 1,000 hours or something, that's when you really devote to it. That's what people have said before in time, whether they're in a smaller band or whether it be Sean Clown from Slipknot. Like, you have to put time into it. So who were some of the biggest influences for you getting into guitar? What are some like artists or albums you can name that have really helped you like devote to wanting to be a guitarist?
Yeah, my process has always kind of been like, I'd hear a song or even just a part in a song, it would just stand out and I'd have to learn it. I had a lot of phases, man. Like, I was really into like just all 70s stuff. Like I say, like a lot of Zeppelin, a lot of just old school rock and roll I liked. Big love for 90s music of all kinds. Yeah, I don't know if I could really pick out one influence, really. I just, music in general, just all of it. There was always something for a different era or a different genre or something that I just, connected with. So I just kind of something from all of it, really.
Yeah.
In metal too, it's still hard to pick one. Yeah, I mean,
because there are so many of them.
Oh, I know. It's hard to find. It's a real challenge, I think, for someone to come along and do the next like groundbreaking thing, because everyone it's kind of like it's already there. Like we've kind of maxed out at this point, So it's now it's like who can go faster and who can do more stuff, right? So it's I don't know. Yeah, it's just it'd be hard to pick one influence, I think.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I compared to that incredibly well, because like up to this point, right, it's been 46 or so episodes of the Anatomy podcast, and like recalling what I said with like my own musical background, starting out with bands like Katy Perry, or not really bands, but just musical individuals, Katy Perry, Tayo Cruz, Hot Shell Ray. Like, I will be absolutely transparent when I admit that was a phase for a little bit, because those were that was the environment I was surrounded by. It was like richer, kind of above mid tier class school and environment. These kids who pop as pop as we understand it to be today was just like, that was when it really started gearing up, was back in like the late 2000s, early 2010s. So what it's nothing compared to going back in time. Sorry, people. Seem to be having some mic issues today. And this is a Shure SM7B. Like, what the fuck? With the focus right. Like, come on. No, like you end up later in life, when you're able to really have an open mind with music, when you're able to explore different eras, different genres, you find something in all genres as a musician, as you should, that you enjoy. And sometimes I have been in conversations with musicians that, like, I don't even know, just musicians in general, who don't even listen to metal, because like it would then provide, as they call, creative pollution. You end up listening to so many different bands that like the music could have an annoying and irritating like infiltration into what you're trying to make. And it's just all these various thought processes and all these various psychscapes and mindsets that end up going into making what you're wanting to make. So I completely understand that. I mean, shit, dude, at this point, I'm a Sinatra fan. I'm a Chris Stapleton fan. I am a Torso Fuck fan. I'm a Mock Luke fan. There are so many bands and artists, so many genres, and then that's not even counting the subgenres. Like, way too much music to digest. So it's definitely hard to isolate. And I mean, shit, if anybody has these questions for me one day, like, who's your favorite band of all time? Who's your favorite artist? I'm like, okay. Let's go ahead and isolate it to a subgenre. Are we talking metalcore? Are we talking slam? Are we talking deathcore, jazz, R&B, hip hop, lo-fi hip hop? It ends up becoming, as you expand, and if you do expand your, like, just, I don't know, musical perspective, really, and you're wanting to become a musician, you're wanting to create, but you're also you feel an obligation instinctively to try to distinguish yourself from all of these other millions of bands around the world. You then have to explore. You have to keep an open mindset and try out as many genres as you can. And that way, you're not saying, oh, I listened to everything. And then you get traumatized when someone shows you Infinite Annihilator. Like, you actually have to listen to everything and give everything a shot and find your own little artist from those genres. It really helps expand. So if anybody, I guess, had that question indirectly, like, how do you create music that helps distinguish from other bands? Just listen to everything, and don't have that kind of high school mentality like I used to, of just, oh, fuck pop, fuck the mainstream music industry, because I still do. I still have that, but I'm like, also, Posty is pretty good. I like Post Malone. I just don't listen to him regularly. Or Suicide Boys, like, I then have Exosociety, which is like a group of lo-fi hip-hop rappers, Kill Bill the Rapper, or Square, or Sav, all that type of fun stuff. You got to find your own artist in those genres. Anyways, I digress. That ended up being a genre and, like, keep an open mind rant or some shit. So as we're getting ready to wrap up what will be the first half of the podcast, trying to get through this as quickly and efficiently as possible whilst telling you guys the stories. The last member that we have today in session, which I didn't even realize this, but we have the whole fucking band here in session. I thought there were like at least 5 or 6 of you, but that works. That really does work. And this is something I mentioned to Greg earlier too. I'm like, man, it's been so long since we've had most of the band on the podcast. Like, no. We have the whole band, and therefore, badass dudes. Thank you. Jack Sutherland. We tell your story now.
Oh.
No. Take as much time as you wish to, man, because obviously, yeah.
So I guess getting into music, I'll start there. I used to grow up on this. I grew up on this little farm out in Manitoba, and if people don't know what Manitoba is, it's it's this cold.
Don't look it up.
Not where, what it is.
Cold, wet, miserable province in Canada with an offensive amount of mosquitoes. So, I had like this 2-hour bus ride to get to school when I was like 6 or 7, whenever that was. And my sister was getting into music. My dad had CDs. I got my first Discman little CD player, portable CD player thing, which I still have. Don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I was just borrowing CDs from my dad and my sister, and there was AC/DC in there. There was the Who, and then my sister bought the Black album, which I immediately stole from her, and that was the album that got me right into metal. And then through the years, Dad showed me Iron Maiden, which was a big influence on me getting into bass when I first started, thinking about playing an instrument. And I don't know if this was supposed to be a joke or what, but my sister's, I was going through a little bit of a country phase when I was a kid, so she, told me to, check out Job for a Cowboy. Yeah. Jokes on her. I loved it. So them and Lamb of God and Slipknot got me into the heavy stuff. So through the younger days, I was big into playing hockey, and came to a point where, you know, it was either you keep playing just for fun, or you get to that point where you know try to play, you know, professionally and take the next route. And I wasn't for any of it at that point, so you know, quit that and needed another hobby. You know, give props to my sister again. She was learning classical guitar at the time. You know, you pluck with your fingers and whatnot, and you know, I tried whittling on that, and I was better than her, so I decided to take that up, and just went straight to bass from there. It was the first instrument. Throughout the years of high school, you know, you meet some guys, and you know, there's some bands in there, mostly rock. Nobody was playing metal, or if they were, it wasn't good. So, you know, playing bass in rock bands, and you know, that was fun. But I was always still listening to the metal. It came further down the line. You know, I ended up with a buddy from high school, actually, and a guy from work. They started this stoner doom sludge band called Haze, and they started as a 2-piece, but they ended up wanting a bass player, so I came in on that, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, and then, you know, eventually that died out, and it was you know, I remember being at a buddy's house, and he had this random 8-string guitar sitting in the corner. I was collecting dust, and you know, asked him if I could borrow it, just to try it out, because I was getting into the, you know, the kind of the djenty music, like After the Burial, Periphery, and that kind of stuff. And you know, After the Burial, using 8s and 9s, I really like that low twang, you know, from being a bass player. So borrowed that thing, and then that kind of just took off from there. Figured out how to play guitar from a 4-string bass to an 8-string guitar. Just went that route.
Double down.
Double down.
Double down, baby.
So yeah, that kind of like started you know, the forefronts of this band was just kind of, you know, bringing out the 8s and liking the low E, drop E tuning. And you know, a lot of the bands I was listening to a couple of years ago when I was first picking up the 8-string was like, you know, like Version's Crown, After the Burial, and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Badass, dude. And fucking Jack over here is like, nah, we don't need a bassist. I'll be the bassist and the guitarist. Like, get the fuck out of here. That works though. It works for the genre, and it works for the technical aspect that incorporates well into this band's sound. So yeah, I mean, I think that is really a great way to wrap up the story. No. Okay, we got to touch up on your orchestral efforts, dude. Like, how'd you end up getting into that? How'd you end up like getting on the keyboard and doing what you have done for the art of attrition? Like, what's up with that?
Oh shit. I guess I listened to a lot of Cradle of Filth as a kid. The Godspeed and the Devil's Thunder album is just a masterpiece, and there's a lot of orchestration in there. And I guess like the bands that were, you know, starting to bring that in, other than like, you know, your Blackened bands like Septic Flesh and Demi Border, was like, you know, Lorna Shore and bands like that, you know, that really brought it in more into the deathcore genre.
Yeah.
So wanted to try it, see if it would give an extra element, mostly to cover up my terrible playing. It's a great distraction. Yeah, like it really helps the mix. But, I had no clue what I was doing. Thankfully, Johnny's more well versed in the musical theory, so
I gotta shout out to my mom for making me take piano lessons and listen to a lot of classical music as a kid.
Yeah.
There you go. Shout out to mom.
That's right.
Yeah, so we tag teamed the orchestration for the record, and you know, it was yeah,
I see you, Greg.
big extra presence in the mix, and we're looking into finding some new stuff to try instead of the classic, you know, orchestration kind of style. Maybe get some synth there.
I can definitely daydream about like interlude tracks where it's just like absolutely out of left field, just kind of speakeasy vibes, like I was mentioning before. I think that would be really interesting, like how you guys could figure out that type of stuff and just incorporating more classical elements and more orchestral elements, like even more than now, which is crazy to think about. And like, you know, like Johnny said before, it's like it's all about who can like peak and just really bring stuff more into the genre, and who can do this next, or who can do a tremolo solo like Adam D'Amico, and then there's like a saxophone in the background somehow. You know, that type of shit really is helping shape the genre. And it's because people are like, okay, so this thing has already been done, just like sampling and like sprinkling a little bit of choir and orchestra in there. What about bringing some fucking horns in, bro? Like, that's kind of like how music goes, and that's how it evolves. And if nothing else, despite my old man not really being in touch with modern music, and you know, not really understanding the music that I was ever into, period, even getting into recently, like the last 2 years, there's one thing that he said that does prevail, and that's that music changes. The scene changes. What's big changes. So it's like you got to keep that momentum for an overall genre. Otherwise, unfortunately, you have OG fans. You have fans that, you know, kind of gatekeep the older material, maybe. And then after that, they're like, I liked when Lorna Shore was immortal. Who the fuck is Will Ramos? Because they, you know, they don't know anything about Awakened Providence or something. So they're like, oh, and like, why is this death metal? Why isn't it just straight MySpace 2000 Deathcore? Oh, I hate it. You know, all this other shit. It's, you know, you have those people, but then obviously you then open up the gates to a new fan base, a new listening audience, maybe even professional vocal coaches or people who have been participating in choirs and orchestra for years. You got them checking out their shit, your shit, because like it's just different. It's like, oh, so these heavier bands are finally incorporating these other elements, like, ooh, and then you got a reaction that has like 1 million views like that, you know? So, and that's also part of the algorithm, is just testing those limits for the sake of viewership, but also just expanding upon creativity. So that being said, for me, it's currently 12:58 p.m. So we've been spending a lot of time on the first half, for sure. And if anything, in this next half, we will be kind of speed running through all of the basic in-person questions, but we will be right back. And we are back. We are back. And I have no idea what number this episode is going to be, but again, this is the Anatomy Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Sean Cross, from over on the Sean Cross YouTube channel. Please consider going over there to checking out all the content that we have, including our clickbait reactions, our album listening sessions that we try to do every morning except for the weekend, because it takes a lot of time, especially depending on how long the album could be. We do vocal covers, or I do vocal covers. I do logo commissions, all this fun stuff. So please, and thank you, be sure to go check that out. Consider subscribing. And also, of course, you know, the band of the hour, the band of the session, go check out our Art of Attrition. Their newest album, their most recent full-length album, The Void Eternal, is now out with the album stream over on the Slam Worldwide YouTube channel and distributed independently. So, gentlemen, as we are preparing to finalize this session, make history for this band and for my channel, I would say, just for the sake of more insight, more personal details about yourselves, we now talk about Art of Attrition as a band. This is basically going to be a questionnaire for everybody to answer. They can have their own responses, but if anything, our objective goal with the time that you guys have will be to get through these questions as quickly and efficiently as possible. So starting off, the band name, boys. Who ended up deciding on Art of Attrition? Does it have a meaning? Is there lore behind it? That type of thing.
I think Jack literally just had a list of random band name and song titles ideas, and we just went through it till we found one that was like not that bad.
It's very long, and I'm still adding to the list.
Absolutely, man. That's badass. So, I mean, it was a decision. It was more or less instinct instead of like, this is what this means. Huh. But over time, as you guys have established yourself, as you now have a full-length record out, and any of the efforts that you've done for this project beforehand, before The Void Eternal, over time, art of attrition, like, you know, the art, the creative medium of attrition, which of course my ass is like, oh, what does attrition mean? So we're gonna Google that real quick, because like that's a very, very sounds like a smart word. I don't know about you guys, but so attrition being the action or process of gradually reducing the strength or effectiveness of someone or something through sustained attack or pressure. So over time, as you guys have kind of established yourself, gotten a full-length album out, have you guys ever established like a meaning for yourselves for the band name?
I think the music itself is the kind of the epitome of the name, you know, because it's like the music is relentless, and it throughout it, like our live set, it's always like high intensity, lots of pressure on the crowd. Like it just very it just kind of, it's unison, it makes sense to the music we create. So that's kind of a good connection to the band, to more or less the music.
Yes. Does anybody else have the thoughts or opinions, like their own depiction of the band's name and its possible headcanon meaning?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, 350 beat per minute blast and kick drums will beat you down over a full length album. You know, our show last night, we had 45 sub drops throughout the whole thing, and I mean, I had more, but you know, I cut it back a bit. But yeah, like seeing us play or listening to our record, it's intense and relentless, keeps beating you down. So
yeah,
I think the definition makes sense.
I think it's one of those things that just we picked it because it sounded cool at the time, and it
Yeah.
just kind of came into its own. Like it worked out. So
I forgot what it meant. Googled it. So.
No, it works, man. And I think among other things too, as a graphic artist myself, someone who's like dipping my toes in the water of what is death metal design or death metal logo design, deathcore logo design in general, starting out with chicken scratches in middle school and high school. The logo that you guys had created, the logo created by Alejandro Morales of Imperfect Design, I think it works really well. And amongst other bands with like the almost identical symmetry that they have in their logos, or for example, the last 10 seconds of life, where it's more or less, it kind of gives you a graffiti vibe, but it reminds you of the music. It reminds you of that relentless, just non-prejudiced beatdown that is provided. I think Art of Attrition and its logo, it really helps kind of distinguish you guys from other bands. And I mean, shit, if I ever saw that on a roster, I'm like, oh, that's them. Cool, you know? So I think
when we got that design back the first time, and it was like, that was like a big moment, man, especially because it was like a recognizable name in logo design. So to kind of see our band name done like that, you know, back in 2020 or whatever, whenever it was, we had that done 2019. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So yeah. Shout out to Imperfect.
Shout out to Imperfect. And one thing I want to mention too is that it balances perfectly the deathcore logo trope with something that's more marketable, something that's more legible. Like you can see that it says Art of Attrition. If you can't, it's probably because you haven't had the opportunity to dive into any foreign languages. And I mean, either that, because that's a big claim. So let's calm down a little bit. Mainly me. Like if anything, like when I look at the logo, it's like I think it's also because I'm more passionate about calligraphy, right? And you know, you have all these slam logos, you have all these doom, drudge, sludge, like all of these subgenres, and most of those, like absolutely, the goal is to be non-readable as possible. So I think what Alejandro ended up doing with the logo was really, really cool. And that's just talking about the logo, okay? So let's go ahead and move on from that. Absolutely, shout out to Imperfect Design, but we got to move on, you know. So if you guys would want to, also, by the way, mentioning Kaylin Stokerman's involvement in the album cover for The Void Eternal. I did not see that coming, but I can definitely tell that it's Kaylin Stokerman's, and massive shout out to him, because what a great album cover. It's got a really good defining color, right? For the album, that being blue. That's why the room's blue right now. I'm like, gotta match the album color, you know what I mean? So with that in mind, right? would you guys be willing to do a track by track lyrical summary for the track listing on the Void Eternal before we go ahead and wrap up session?
I'll give you a quick rundown.
Cool. So in that case, starting with, I mean, the Void Eternal, the title track, what ended up being the creative process behind like deciding this is the Void Eternal? Like how did that go?
Johnny came up with the name. It was actually supposed to be the name for Understanding Hate, but just thought it was such a, iconic name, and so made it the intro name instead. Kind of made a elemental kind of intro for it, and figured, if we're gonna stick with it album name, this would be the perfect song to make it now. So
that's badass. And I guess it's been quite some time, and I'm noticing it's only 8 seconds, so I assume this is an intro. This is more like an instrumental or something, correct?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So with that being said, I mean, yeah, was there a specific reason behind the Void Eternal being the album's name? Is there any like overlapping theme lyrically with this album that the Void Eternal ties to?
It sounded cool. I mean, the album sounded cool.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Track 2, that being Apoplexy. What is this going? What is lyrically going on here?
It's about being mad. I don't know. It's just yeah, early 20s, having kind of a rough patch, so it kind of dives into that a little bit, and some of the feelings as a result of some of those circumstances and situations. It's kind of more on
cool
emo side of things, I suppose.
Yeah. And I mean, after all, the definition for apoplexy would be unconscious or incapacity resulting from a cerebral hemorrhage or stroke. That's pretty intense. All right. I like that. We have track 3 then, the Malthusian Catastrophe. That's a big name. That's a big name. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's so I don't know where I heard that, but I think I was getting lost in the internet trying to find the end of the internet or something. I was pretty deep, but I stumbled upon this theorem made by this guy called Thomas Malthus back in the 1800s about how the world's population would exponentially, yeah, that one would grow, but we would run out of space, run out of resources to feed that population. So that's kind of what his theorem was, and it's like that's kind of metal as fuck, actually. It's like you can kind of see it happening in the modern world right now. So it hit hard. I told Josh, just like, hey, this is a wicked title. What can you do with it? And yeah, he wrote some amazing stuff for it.
What's the opening line?
I feel damned.
I feel damned.
Damn. Yeah.
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 And
I mean,
just fucking hits you like a frying pan.
it really does. I do remember that. Like, I don't know. What's up?
Just cast iron frying pan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, especially like that's the reason I start with these albums. Like, I start my day with albums like this, people, and it's so fun. It helps wake me up a little bit and prepare me for the grueling 10-hour shifts that I do every weekday. Like, it's a great way to start the morning. And this was definitely one of those albums that, like, because I listen to albums every morning, it kind of gets lost in the sauce. It gets lost in the memory banks. But, the homework's there. And I remember loving this album, and especially when lyrically the songs end up alluding to, philosophers and their theories and stuff, their ideologies. That ends up being the reason why Silent Planet is like one of my favorite bands in the world. So shout out to you guys for absolutely killing at least the references, you know what I mean, and alluding to these actual people and their actual philosophies and stuff. That's really cool. Track 4, we have Deep Red.
It's on a very similar note. It's more about the fishing industry and how abusive it is towards the oceans that we've got around. So I grew up on the coast of BC, so seen a lot of you know, a lot of good out of the industries, but a lot of bad as well. So Deep Red is kind of a play on Deep Blue.
Oh, I
The
like
blue is
that.
red.
Yeah, and I mean, after all, like when you think of incidents and stuff, right, with oil rigs or something, or just like chemical spill, sometimes the shores would wash deep red because of the oil. You know what I mean? So I mean that works pretty well as far as applying it to the cons of like major corporations and stuff, and what could be their intentional mishaps that complicate world progression as we understand it today. Track 5, we have Under the Weight of Apathy. What is going on here?
That was the first song that we did together as a group. I think that was the song that I sent. I did kind of like a demo track, and I kind of just was like, let's write something kind of moody and depressing with like, there was no, like, because the Apoplex, all the other songs I feel like very personally like relate to, but this was a little bit more of like, let's just dream something up that's not like, we'll fabricate something here.
Yes.
And then so they heard it, and they obviously, like I said previously, didn't hate it that much. They gave it A for acceptable. And then I just stuck as one of the songs, and I was like, oh, these lyrics are actually like, they're good. So it's very different for me to write something that I am not, you know, at all like, it's not something like pertaining to a specific point of my life or a certain emotion or something I feel passionately about. Is very much just like, let's just throw some shit together and make it work. And it went really, really well. So
Fantastic, dude. Yeah. And you said that when it came to writing this track, this was the first track. This was like kind of the pitch. It's like, hey, I am serious about being a vocalist and I would love to participate in your project. You said you ended up sending the demos for like the vocal work for this, right? Or did they send you the instrumentals, you put the vocals on, and then you sent it back?
Yeah, that's what happened. So they sent me the tracks, the kind of a scratch track type thing. I believe there's like 4 at the start. I can't remember all the working titles and what ones it was, but Under the Weight of Apathy was the very first one. Like what was the name of that? Was there
Something awesome.
Yeah, Something Awesome. That's what
They're like, yeah, absolutely. No, it's really cool. And like to see, you know, that type of work, your debut efforts really with this band come into fruition and at least get, you know, placed halfway into the album. That's really cool. That's a good touch.
that's the made a music video about as well.
Oh shit. Okay. I mean, I gotta check that out then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting to watch.
Sweet. Then after that, we have track 6, Understanding Hate.
Yeah, that's it. That's a bit more of a doozy. I really love that song. Just like we talked about earlier, just how relentless the music is. Like that song, just from end to end, is just like, just beats the shit out of you. Like it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's just you're gone for 4.5 minutes, however long it is.
Right.
That song is a little bit about. I got bullied a bit growing up. So it's a little bit of like empathizing with some people kind of standing up for themselves and
understanding the hatred behind like prejudices and stuff, and like just kind of acknowledging that and, you know, just bringing awareness to it. That's very important because I mean, most of us here in session, you know, we were kind of oppressed for a little bit by people who just didn't understand what we were participating in. So that's always good. Track 7, we have Hunt.
Yeah, that one had a cool working title.
Oh yeah, it was working title was called Chonk.
Oh, wait, once okay, now you guys are back. It was like very quiet for a second. Sorry.
Oh, the working title for Hunt was called Chonk.
It seems to be blocking out again. I'm not sure what's going on. It's like getting really. I can hear you guys better now, but I think it's going to depart again here pretty soon. Oh boy. Okay, I can hear you guys better now. You may continue. Sorry.
Okay.
I think
You're asking working title for that?
Ah, damn it. Yeah, I don't know what's happening, boys. The sound seems to be going low on you guys' end, except for like when Greg decides to go, I'm not sure what's going on.
The working title was called Chonk.
I can't hear you guys at all now. What the hell? He starts doing sign language. He's like, I don't know what's going on. Let's see.
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Say something.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Hi. Okay.
Hey. Josh,
Jesus.
I mean,
The volume's back now. Okay. I think.
你说中文吗?
What? Pardon?
Okay.
Yeah, so we're talking about Hunt.
It was called Chonk because it's a chonky riff.
Oh, okay.
And that one is also kind of similar. So the whole kind of the motif for the song is dog will hunt. And it's so we all, I guess, yeah, we all kind of work in construction. I guess Greg got a tattoo shop now, but he was a pipeliner for a while. Jack's an instrumentation tech. I'm a welder, and you're a mechanic, right? Or auto body tech. So kind of dives into a bit of the predatory nature of some companies, especially in oil and gas. So kind of similar to Understanding Hate. It's kind of angry, kind of punky, kind of chonky.
Sick. Yeah, bringing more awareness during the album. I really do. Yeah, that's really cool. Track 8, we have The Hive Inside. What's going on with this? This sounds like a horror movie pitch, okay?
I think this one's about addiction, not personal. More, I grew up in a very small town, and as some more industrial activity has came through the town, it's kind of gone from just the standard drunkenness in parks and stuff to needles showing up and things getting a bit out of control, but trying to be understanding of the struggles that a lot of people go through with that, and how difficult it can be to pull out of it, especially when you slide down that path. It seems like the world just turns more and more against you. So
yeah,
that's the hive inside. It's kind of taking control of the situation to feed the addiction and taking over the body, so to speak.
right. Really haunting lyrically speaking, because that, like, with that context in mind, yeah, addiction is a terrible thing. I've known a couple people who have gotten addicted to certain substances out of just, like, I don't know, just depression and stuff. They're trying to look for an escape, and that's the only way they feel is the escape is just getting hooked to a substance and relying on that substance, looking for that band-aid, looking for that temporary solution. So it's definitely important to bring awareness to that. Track 9, to conclude the record, we have To Dance in the Den of the Snakes, which I like that title. I really do.
We do too.
Yeah.
Go on, we got shirts about it. Greg made up, or did you make it, or did we commission that?
We commissioned.
Okay.
Oh
we
shit,
commissioned-
the audio seems to be cutting out again, boys. Sorry. I can only hear you slightly in my left ear.
Hello.
I don't know why the hell that's happening. That's annoying.
It looks like we're connected now.
Nah,
Yeah.
it's still really quiet.
Ah.
Agreed. I wonder what's going on you guys' end, or maybe it's me. I don't think so, but
I don't know. We see that you have full bars, and then
Oh.
we have full.
okay. I'm hearing better now.
You think that's on purpose?
Oh,
Cool.
Yeah. Can
Y'all
you hear
are-
us now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
To Dance in the Den of Snakes.
Their faces. All right. I got fired from a job, and I was kind of like, "Fuck you guys! You're a bunch of snakes." And yeah, so that was kind of a bit of I used to be a bit of a workaholic. That's actually partially why I went from Prince George Edmonton in the first place, because I was working too much and I had an opportunity to do more music stuff. So I was like, okay, I can dial back the work shit a bit and get a healthy lifestyle on track here with a little bit more time for the important stuff that is art and whatnot.
Right.
So To Dance in the Den of Snakes was kind of about that, exiting that a little bit and making more space and time for, like I said, the important things.
Yes, exactly. Like
What's
learning
the-
that devoting to companies and devoting to corporate anything really, like as much as some people do. I mean, I'm guilty of it too with the 50 hours a week and shit. It's hard to break away from that when, you know, that's what you need to depend on sometimes. But then once you take that final leap, once you're in legitimately a good position to do so, you can afford to do so. That's when you really like free yourself from, you know, your normal 9 to 5, your average 9 to 5, like wherever in the world you may be. But it's important to always recognize that, you know, you got to be prepared financially and emotionally, psychologically for like everything that could happen, but also don't base the future off of what ifs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that will be Under the Skin of the Void Eternal. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time here on the Unanimity podcast, whatever number episode it ends up being. Before we go ahead and wrap up session, because I know we've far preceded an hour session by now, and I'll do apologies for that. Is there anything you guys wanted to plug or shout out before we go ahead and end session?
Just thank you to everyone that supported us this far, and everybody we've worked with, and everyone that listens to the music. Without everybody, you know, listening and working with us, this can't happen. And yeah, so we just appreciate, you know, everybody that has helped us this far.
Badass. And I think that will wrap up session, unless any of you other boys wanted to say something. I'm stuttering. Jesus.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you, man.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for, again, going on the adventure that you did just to get to the casting couch and conducting the session, because I know weather is ass right now, farther north than what I am. So shout out to the boys in Art of Attrition, that being Greg, Josh, Jack, and Johnny. And we will see you guys next time. Who fucking knows what the band is going to be? We have plenty of artists in lineup, but things fall through sometimes. So we'll see what happens. And otherwise, we will see you guys next time. Thank you for listening.